All right, this is a basic Waves eMotion LV1 console overview. I get a few questions about this. This is one of my primary mixing desks that I use for mixing live sound. So just wanted to take a couple of minutes and go through some of the basic components, and maybe we can see about if there's any questions, if anyone wants to know any more detailed information about it later on. So we'll just get started here. This is the primary surface I use at front of house, and then what you're seeing here as a whole, this is the entire system. I have things set up and laid out a little differently than I normally do in a live configuration, just for the purpose of demonstration and maybe looking at some other videos later on. But again, going back, this is the primary surface. This case actually has these two monitors that are mounted all the time, and this case unit actually allows the upper monitor to fold down flat against the lower monitor with a piece of foam in between that protects them, and actually stows away and is transported in a Pelican that fits it nice and tight. So as a component to this, we have on the right here, this is the Waves Axis 1. That's the host computer that runs the software. Directly on the opposite side of that, in the same rack shelf, is the Extreme Server C. So those units, the host runs the actual software. The server handles all of the console audio processing for plug-in units and mix engine in this case. The way I have the two monitors set up is I always keep fader layers, mixer 1, on my lower monitor, with the upper secondary screen as a channel view, which allows me to easily go back and forth between each and adjust any channel parameter within a few quick sources. A couple more details on the case. I'll just hop around to the back. It has some custom panel units for allowing connection for data, USB expansion, PowerCon true in and through, and these are pretty much the entire connections that are required to make the Surface operable. The other primary component for the system is the actual stage I/O, which in this case I have the front of house Surface unit sitting directly on top of that rack, which normally lives on stage. This being, in my case, I'm using two of the Sound Studio STG I/O boxes. The top one is 24 inputs, 12 outputs, with the second box being 16 inputs and 8 outputs. Inside this box, I have another SoundGrid approved network switch. It's all connected. It basically connects things in a star topology, with the primary end being right here for the data connection. In addition to this, I also have another server at the very bottom, and in most cases this serves as a backup or a redundant in case, going back here, this server on the left of the primary control surface, if something happens and that unit goes down, it will immediately switch over to this backup server here, which is located directly with the stage I/O. So that's the primary core of the system. For some of the other finer points on front of house processing, this rack will typically travel and actually be the mixer stand for the actual Surface. So this rack contains some really nice pieces. The upper units being some real analog elements that actually, if you look on this Neve chassis here, the first four are components that I can individually insert into a vocal chain into different insert slots of the console. And the way I have it set up right now, basically each 500 series module can act as its own individual external insert. And then that's 1 through 4 on all of the Neve pieces. And this Alicia piece here on the right is a stereo unit, and I use that for one of the instrument groups. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the stereo unit, so that occupies the Neve chassis. Below that is the Neve master bus processor, which ended up filling up 7 and 8 on my I/O, and all of this is brought into the architecture of the SoundGrid system with the Apogee Symphony Mark II converter, which this one is obviously the SoundGrid enabled version, which allows me to take all 8 of those inputs and outputs from the analog paths up here and insert them into the digital ecosystem in a very, very efficient way possible. Directly below that is actually a unit made by the company Direct Out, and this is called the SG Matty. For the time being, this is really only providing a couple of mic pre's for talk and measurement, and also a line out pair and a headphone out pair that enabled me to do some near field monitoring. This came in very handy for one of the recent projects that I did where a band that I work for did a live stream, and so I was able to use specifically the outputs for those for my Q out. Directly below that is Lake LM26. I have it set up in Mesa mode, so that's 4 in, 4 out at this point. It actually takes drive from the AES section of the Apogee to do PA drive, with this rack typically living at front of house. Below that, storage drawer, and then power in and through on this guy on regular PowerCon 20 amp connectors. In addition, just a laptop computer that is running the up-to-date SoundGrid driver. It's right now I just have Smart pulled up on it, just as kind of a springboard to another conversation that we could possibly have. So that's kind of an overview. Video ended up being a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but sometimes that's the nature of how these things go. So if there's anyone interested that would like to know any specifics about the system, or any questions as to how certain things are accomplished, I know there's a lot of literature out there. There's a lot of material. You can obviously educate yourself, but if there's anything specific, whether that is configuration or some one of the finer points that does get asked about a lot is the actual integration between Smart Analysis and the tracked plugin instantiation, and that is something that I have used and requires some specific type of connections in order to make that work well, efficiently, and more to a finer point, free of any glitches or problems that can be caused by some pretty easily mistakable type of data connections. So there it is. Again, curious to know if anyone's interested about anything specific on the unit. I'm happy to take some feedback there, maybe make some other videos in terms of anything that anyone would like to know for a specific operation. Hope you're all doing well out there, and have a great day. Cheers.